Mark, know what I said about eloquent?
Yes.
You checked right here, buddy. I'm still holding on to it.
You hold on to it.
Where's it coming from?
A couple was vacationing, and they had a need to stop into the dentist. And the wife went over and grabbed the dentist, and she said, "Look, I've got to have this tooth extracted. Just skip the Novocaine. We're in a big hurry. Let's just get this done, okay?" And the dentist looked at her and said, "Ma'am, I've got to tell you, in all the years I've been a dentist, that's the bravest thing I've ever heard anyone say to me. I'm impressed." "Well, which tooth is it?" And she looked over at her husband and said, "Honey, show him too." That is a metaphor for depression. Just yank it out and get past it. Snap out of it. Just snap out of it. Come on, we have life to live. We have things to do. Get out of bed. Get out of the house. Why are you always so sad? Just snap out of it. You can imagine my life is filled with the big three: depression, anxiety, and anger. All day long, those are the big three that come into my office, and I walk into their office, or a hospital trauma bay, or a morgue. I'm often in funeral homes. I'm regularly in cemeteries. I'm surrounded by depression, anger, and anxiety, and suicide all day. It's my life. It's a dark, dark, dreary Edgar Allan Poe existence, and I love it. And it's odd that I love it, because I was made for it. I am equipped to do it. People ask me, "How can you do this?" It has little to do with the training and the 12 years of education and all the licenses and certification. I am equipped to be in darkness. I know how to find the light in the darkness. That is a burden itself. That sometimes depresses me. I, however, do not stay in bed. I just drink. You think I'm kidding. When all hope is lost, dealing with depression in someone you love. Sometimes that could be yourself, or living with someone who is perpetually depressed or down. I'm going to give you a few basics in how to survive it. I wrote them down because, as you can imagine, I could just freestyle this whole thing, but I don't want to do that. I want to stay behind the pulpit and stay near the microphone and give you some time-proven tips. Number one, encourage open discussion with the person who is depressed. Have talks about this. Don't simply ignore it. When you simply ignore it, you give it too much power, and that does not help the situation. You could say something like, "I know you're depressed and you can't help it, but I'm frustrated. I need to talk about how I'm feeling about your depression." Depression and living with someone who is perpetually depressed is exhausting. It is exhausting. It is exhausting. It is frustrating. It is maddening. You want to run away. Sometimes you do run away. Sometimes you'd like them to die. You have all of these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions, because no matter what is occurring, that person never seems to get any higher than he or she can get. It's as good as it gets, them being down and cynical and just, oh my goodness, how do you stay in the presence of someone who just won't come out of it? Now, yes, there is medication. There are great SSRIs and great medications that, in some people, keyword, some people, work. But they do not cure it. They manage it. They make it more palatable. They make it a little easier to get up, and a few less clouds are in the sky. But for many people, the medications do not work, or the side effect protocols are off the chart and they can't handle the side effects, so they quit the medication within 2 or 3 weeks. Worse, there are people that take the medication and it does work. And within a month, they're cured, so they stop the medication. Well, you feel better because the medication's on board. Taking it away is not a good idea, but it happens. So, yeah, modern medical science and physicians can help with depression. There are 2 types of depression. One is called situational, and the other one's called marriage. Oh, no, this one is called situational depression, and the other is called endogenous or DNA depression. So you've got depression that's permanent on board, and then you got situational or circumstantial or exogenous depression, which occurs as a result of an event or a situation not going well. All of us at times get depressed. All of us at times feel down. But I'm talking this morning about how to be in the presence of someone who stays there and who never gets relief and never will get relief. There are a lot of people that the medications do work a little bit, but they stay unhappy and they flirt, as Carrie said, with suicide hourly. They find that suicide is a way out. They imagine that it's an end, and that's an interesting concept in and of itself. We'll talk about that in a second. But the first thing you can do is encourage open discussions. You might want to ask the person in your life that is constantly depressed, tell me, am I fulfilling a role, or how am I like anyone in your past that has negative connotations? Because depression is usually lifelong, and the people who are the caregivers or in the lives of the depressed people often trigger past events without realizing that they're triggering these events. And if the person, say that's me, can figure out what it is I'm saying or doing that's reminding your unconscious mind of what's making you so unhappy, maybe I can change that. Maybe I can alter that. Maybe I can be a little bit different and be more sensitive to it. How do my actions trigger events? Another important thing for you to know is you should always avoid triggers. Study and identify the triggers in the person that's depressed and figure out what you can do to prevent events or episodes from occurring. Let sleeping dogs lie. In other words, learn how not to create an episode. Learn what to do. And if you've been married any amount of time, you've already figured this out. You know how to prevent an argument. You know when to walk away. You know when to speak. It's very similar in living with someone who's depressed. Figure out what triggers that person and try and anticipate and avoid a confrontation like that. Something else you need to remember is you always have to admit how powerless you are against depression. You're powerless. You're powerless to fix it. You cannot cure them. You cannot love them enough and long enough to make them better. And by the way, it's not your fault. It's not your fault if they're depressed. Sometimes they'll make you feel like it's your fault. It's your fault because you didn't come home with the milk I asked you to come home with. It's your fault. They'll sometimes make you feel like somehow you're responsible for their misery. Misery loves company. There's a reason for that. So you have to be very aware it is not your fault. If somebody you love who is depressed commits suicide, it is not your fault. They have every right to kill themselves. Every right to do it. We don't have to agree, but it's their right to make that choice. I happen to think in most cases it's not the correct choice. I have a theory about suicide that I cannot prove, but I'll share it with you anyway. I don't think suicide solves the problem. I think suicide perpetuates the problem. Now, you've often heard it said suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary issue. That's not what I'm talking about. I believe that when you commit suicide, you kill the vessel, but you don't kill the pain. I think that the pain is emotional, and that emotional pain is spiritual pain, so all you've done is kill the host, and now you have a disembodied, painful spirit that is eternally in pain, with no chance to fix the problem. While you're still in the vessel, you can fix the problem. You can have conversations. You can have a dialogue. But if you kill the vessel expecting to put an end to what it is that bothers you, all you're doing is releasing the demon that has been torturing you, and now you are eternally floating with no place to go except to re-experience the pain you thought you were killing. I tell young people that who have tried suicide, who are thinking about it, they'll come in and they'll say, this is the answer, this is the way to get out. And I'll propose, what if it isn't? What if all you do is kill the vessel and you float away and you watch your dead body be harvested off, and you're still just as unhappy, just as tormented, just as painful, and now you have no voice, you have no hands, now you have no way to process that situation. You are now a disembodied, perpetual, painful spirit. And that creates just enough doubt that it might stop them from making that final moment. Now, I have no way to prove it, except that I do think there are some disembodied spirits floating around me at times. I have felt and seen some very odd things over the years. And I've watched and been present just before and after suicides. Again, I have no scientific way to measure it. It's just observations and feelings and sensations. But I don't think suicide solves it. In fact, I'm so convinced of it, I'll often force someone's hand, Judy. I'll say, go ahead, kill yourself. I've got other appointments. Get on with it. Now, I don't say that to psychiatrically challenged people who are truly capable of doing it. I say that to the sad sacks who come in and talk about it, but they're all talk and no action. And they'll quote God, and I'll say, the Lord hates a quitter. Get after it. Do it. But they're sad, and they're calling out for help. And that's the final cry, isn't it? I'm going to end it all. That's the final cry. I mean, there's nowhere else to go, unless you shoot somebody else. There's nowhere else to go. We think it ends the pain, but I don't think it does. Another thing that you can always do is you can encourage help. Every single time you're in the presence of someone depressed, encourage help. Encourage them to get professional help. Encourage them to take better care of themselves. Be aware of your own programming. If you're the caregiver or the friend or the person in the life of someone who's depressed, be aware of how you're feeding that and what you're getting from it. Many professionals and laymen who are caregivers enjoy being in the presence of someone perpetually depressed because it fulfills their need to be needed. They're rescuers. They get something from the person staying depressed. And so they really don't want that person to come up, because if they do, their role goes down. So you have to watch what you're getting out of the depressed person. Be very aware of how that depression and that depressed person is affecting and influencing and maybe even feeding your ego. Protect your own health. It's another time-tested truth. Don't let your own feelings destroy you. Be very clear with someone who is depressed how far you'll go. Spell out the boundaries. Spell out your level of responsibility. I will do this, this, and this. You will do this, this, and this. Otherwise, you get enmeshed and it gets very meshy. Not everyone gets that. Openly communicate how you feel with someone depressed. It will strengthen the relationship. It takes the sting and the elephant out of the room. Just flat out say it. I know you're feeling down. I know you're always going to be feeling down. And I'm always going to be frustrated because I can't fix it. Talk about it. It takes the sting away. Just talk about it. No harm will come by talking about it. You can't create a suicide ideation by talking about it. Actually, you take the sting away. So openly talk about it. When someone says, Mark, how are you? I always say, it ain't easy being me. And I mean it. And I love what you said, Zach. You like coming here because people let you be who you are. Well, there are days I don't like being me. That's the truth. I'm not going to lie and say, I'm fine. I'm not fine. I'm not. Not every day. Spend time away. Get away from the depressed person. Get away from the situation. Take time for yourself. This is a hard one because caregivers and people who are in the lives of depressed people, they don't want to leave because they're afraid something bad will happen. Maybe they hope something bad will happen. I spend every day talking to people who very much need a break. They turn down cruises, they turn down trips, they turn down 3-day weekend jaunts to Disney World because they can't leave mom or they can't leave whoever, fill in the blank. And I'll say, why not? Why? Well, they might fall or they might do this or if they could do that with you there. Go, get away, set a plan in place, have someone check on them, and go. Let your mind be free and take care of yourself. They'll almost never do it because of what? What's the one word?
Worry.
Guilt. Damn guilt. Catholics everywhere. Guilt. Because what's going to happen? If something happens while you're gone and you come back, can you live with that? I have people in my office who can't live with that. One lady went on a trip, a KISS cruise, Liz, a KISS cruise. That group, KISS, they have cruises. And you can go on a cruise on a ship and they'll play, they'll just play constantly, I guess. Well, she went on a KISS cruise and left her depressed husband at home. She came back from the cruise and he was dead. He did not commit suicide. He died from cardiac arrest. But in her mind, she feels if I had been there, I could have fixed it. She couldn't have because the situation was not correctable. But the guilt, I should have stayed. I should have been present. We need to take care of ourselves. And we need to find a confidant. We need to talk to somebody professionally or just a friend that can help us through and help us vent what it's like to be in the life of someone who's constantly depressed. It's called When All Hope is Lost. Let me just talk to you honestly, as if I haven't already been doing that. Sometimes hope is lost. Now, I found this in the back of the church here. You know, it says hope, and it was all dusty, and it was in there, and it's nice, you know, but the truth of the matter is, sometimes hope is lost. There are people in my life that have been in my life for years, and they are, listen to me, they are hopeless. They are. Now, I am a constant optimist, but I'm also a realist, and I'm all right with their hopeless state. I'm okay with that. But there is no hope for them. They will not get better. It's as good as it gets for them. Misery is all they know. They do it so well. If I pulled it away or if anyone took it away, they would crumble. It's their life. It's their identity. So I do think that there is a situation in our lives when all hope is lost. And if we had time, I'd talk about ways to possibly treat that, to re-infuse or infuse or somehow help someone create hope from hopelessness. Because that's the trick. That's the key. Movies, songs talk about depression. They talk about the hopelessness of life, the sadness of the day. I mean, what, after all, do you have to do for the rest of the day? What are you going to do? How are you going to spend the rest of your Sunday? Are you optimistic? Are you going to plant flowers? Are you going to enjoy the sun? Or are you going to go home and eat and close the door and go back to bed? Hope is created. And we have to perpetuate and create and manufacture our own hope. There's a great episode of Star Trek. If you don't like Star Trek, you really shouldn't be a Unitarian. There's a great episode, and a question is asked, why do you choose to exist here? And it's a classic line, because why do you choose to exist? Every day we make a choice to live and make it as good as it gets. I choose every day to walk in darkness and to revel in it, and to accept that I cannot correct, fix, or rescue, but I can be present and accounted for and openly communicate with someone who believes that all hope is lost. I'm very, very okay with lostness. That's not something I have to fix or correct. And that's part of how you survive when you're in the presence of someone who is lost, who is a hopeless case, whose depression will never, never subside. There'll be good moments, typically when they're asleep, but other than that, it's pretty difficult. I'm not just speaking clinically, I'm speaking from personal experience. 2/3 of the people in my life are depressed, clinically depressed. The rest of them are angry and full of anxiety. I wrote a poem. There's no one happy in my life, and I'll say it to you next month when I come back. Now, since I cannot stay for the question and answer today because the depressed person that I'm responsible for won't let me, are there questions or thoughts that you'd like to say? Yeah, I thought you were thinking about something.
I have people who are chronically depressed in my life, and one time I was talking to my husband about it, kind of saying, well, it's my fault, and he said, don't flatter yourself.
Right.
And I've always, when you were talking, I thought of that.
Right.
If you go away and leave your mom who has Alzheimer's and she gets lost while you're gone, well,
right.
Don't flatter yourself.
Right. Well, you just said what I brought up. Sometimes there are secondary gains for us. We feel like they'll be lost without us. So don't flatter yourself is exactly that. Don't flatter yourself. You're not as important as you think you are. You're really not. But there are people who need to have that role in their lives. And so that's the real reason they won't go away and take care of themselves, is because they are at a place where they need that. Don't flatter yourself. That's beautiful. Thank you. Remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
My mother's happiest 4 months of her life was her last 4 months of her life, when she was given the diagnosis of having lung cancer.
Yeah.
She got very happy. She couldn't tell me enough how much she loved me. She was smiling to her sister. And she used to, when her sister would walk in the room, she'd always bite her head off, And she just got very, very happy.
Because she was leaving.
Yeah. So I got to finally see my mother happy. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That's very common, by the way, working with dying people in hospice. They're overjoyed. Many of them are not sad. They're glad to be on their way out of here. So thanks for sharing that. All right, Carrie, I'm giving it back to you. It's yours. Come get it. Let's sing some more.